Hey guys, it's Mr. Mini Painter back again with another tutorial of Thorin and Company, and today I'm painting Oin. Oin is one of the dwarves, one of the older dwarves from the Lord of the Rings Hobbit movies, and you can see it here. I've base coated it with a black primer. It's one of the plastic models and they don't have too many details, but I'm going to try and add some as we go along. So this is quite an easy model, quite an easy paint, I think, but let's try and make it interesting, right? So to start, I'm using Bugman's Glow for the face. The hands are in gloves on this one, so it's just the face. I'm highlighting it with some Cadian flesh tone, and as usual, I'm doing some outlines first and a wash of Cadian flesh tone later on to blend those two colors together a little bit more. Lastly, I'm using Kislev Flesh, and I'm doing the same method as I did before. First the lines, create some wrinkles on his head, edge highlight those eyebrows, the nose, the mouth, and then kind of blend those colors together, thinning your paint down, and go over it again. You can darken it or brighten it, whatever you want. For the eyes, I'm using Palette Witch Flesh. Usually I do it a little bit earlier than the highlights, but I chose to do it later on now because the eyes on this model are quite well visible, reachable. So you put in a dot there with Abaddon Black to make the pupil. This is the most critical process in your face painting, because if those pupils are slightly off, well, he looks ridiculous. For the hair, I'm using Mechanica Standard Gray as a base color. He has quite an extensive beard. Then wash it a little bit with some Nuln Oil. His beard can be quite dark with some very bright gray highlights later on. But because of the massiveness, you want to have some real shades in there. I also painted his eyebrows. And next, when you let this dry, you highlight it with some gray cere. Focus on the mustache, top of the beard, and some of those strands of hair, but you want it to be mainly dark with a couple of highlights. Next, Perignon Burgundy and Abaddon Black on his main coat. Make it nice and dark, so that we can highlight it later on. And the highlight will be pure Perignon Burgundy. And you leave some shades in there and just pick out those top folds, top of the arm, anywhere where the light would be. Next, I'm using Fondia Brown on those bands on the side of his coat. There's a couple of them on the upper body and the lower body. You can see it right here, and I wanted to have a different color. To highlight the coat, I'm using Screamer Pink and added it to the Perignon Burgundy. And because this is going to be a brighter version, of course, minimize what you paint so you can still see the previous layers. You get a nice blend. You can do some wet painting if you want, mix down your paint and go over it with several layers, if you want to smooth it out even more. I used some Nuln Oil to darken the creases on his belt and create a little bit of an outline besides those colors. Next, Rhinox Hide and Abaddon Black for the boots. mix it to get a nice dark leathery look. And I used grey cere on the woolen bands around his legs. At least I think it's kind of a wool. That's the way I interpreted it. So I used some grey cere there. And Steel Legion Drab and Abaddon Black on the straps around the wool. Then you can slightly shade it with Apothecary White, which in this case I like more than Null Noil, for example. You can thin down Null Noil if you want, but Apothecary White gives this nice even spread of shade on white areas, so that looks very nice. Then some Doomble Brown on the strap on his back. We're then going to paint the staff with a base coat of Rhinox hide. I also used Rhinox hide on the scabbard on the back. Then some lead belcher for the metal parts, which is his hearing aid device dangling on his belt over here, and the tips of the staff. Next I used some Doomble Brown to highlight the edges of the scabbard, and some Null Noil on the metal parts. Next is his hat, or hood. I think it's a hood, right? More or less strapped around his head. Steel Legion Drab and some Abaddon Black I mixed together to darken it down and paint all of those hood elements, including the bands dangling on his back. It's quite a large area considering the model. So to create a little bit of shading, I'm using some Agrax Earthshade to get some nice shades in the recesses of this hood. And I also use a little bit on the leathery parts I painted before. Now we're going to make this a little bit more interesting by using Abaddon Black and a fine detail brush, or at least a fine detail tip of the brush, to get some pattern on the top of his head. All over the head if you want, or just a band. I chose just to do the bands and create some line effects, some triangles here. And that's it for Oin. Thank you so much for watching again. I hope you liked this video. There will be a next one because we're doing the entire Thorin's Company. If you enjoy these kinds of videos, please consider subscribing to my channel and I'll keep posting more. Bye bye!